You've been told that social anxiety goes away if you challenge your negative thoughts, expose yourself to other people. But here's what nobody tells you. Those things aren't getting to the root of the problem. There is something running underneath your thoughts, underneath the avoidance. And until you understand what that thing is, it doesn't matter how much work you put in to try to fix them, it will keep regenerating all of the negative thoughts you're trying to fix. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what that thing is, what it does, and why it's been invisible to you this whole time. Hey, welcome back, or welcome if you're new. I'm Blake, and this is Social Anxiety Haven. You can find more at socialanxietyhaven.com. I want to tell you up front what this channel is and what it isn't. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a self-help creator. I'm someone who had severe social anxiety, failed with the standard approaches, and then spent years reverse engineering what was exactly happening underneath it all. From my experience, I built a clinical model that attempts to help people with social anxiety recover from their disorder. If you've tried CBT, done the exposure work, been on medication, and you're still here, I want you to know something before we go any further. That where you are right now is not a reflection of your effort. It's not a reflection of your commitment. It is a reflection of a gap in the model those approaches are built on. And that gap is exactly what this video is about. What I'm going to walk you through today is the mechanism that I believe sits at the center of why social anxiety persists. Not the symptoms, but the engine underneath the symptoms. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what this engine is and how it functions. The standard explanation for why social anxiety persists goes something like this. You have negative thoughts. Those thoughts generate anxiety. The anxiety drives avoidance. And avoidance prevents the disconfirmation of those thoughts, so the cycle continues. This model isn't wrong. It describes a very real psychological process. The problem isn't that this model is false. The problem is that it's describing the surface layer of the disorder. It doesn't describe the mechanism that's generating the thoughts in the first place. There is a behavior running underneath the thought loops that is generating your anxiety. And until that thing is named, the negative thoughts are almost impossible to break permanently because you're working on outputs while the input source stays active. That input source has a name, and it's the thing I want to spend the rest of this video on. The thing that maintains social anxiety, at the level most approaches don't reach, is a self-suppression strategy. Self-suppression is the act of deliberately or subconsciously suppressing what you want to say out of fear of judgment or criticism. It isn't something that's found in the big moments. It's found in the conversations that are much smaller and feel almost completely automatic. For example, let's say someone asks you what you want from the grocery store. You ask yourself, well, what do I want? And something inside of you just decides to pull back. You don't fully answer the question. You minimize yourself and your chance of rejection by separating who you are from the situation. Instead of saying something like, can you get me milk and cookies? You might say, I'm not sure, or I don't really care. What this does is it prevents you from exposing what you really want in the situation. And as a result, it prevents you from confirming that nothing wrong existed in the first place. By deferring, you are preventing yourself from fully and authentically showing yourself to the world. That is the self-suppression strategy. And the reason it's so hard to identify is that by the time you have social anxiety at any significant level, it isn't a decision anymore. It's conditioned over years of experience. Here's where it comes from more specifically. Let's say that it's the first day of school and your teacher asks you to introduce yourself to the class. You respond to the question by saying your name, age, and maybe a fun fact about yourself. You think to yourself that you did well until you hear snickers going on behind you. That kid is so weird, one of them says behind your back. Who would want to be friends with him? As soon as you begin to hear this, your mind turns your attention inwards to protect yourself. You rationalize from that situation that it isn't safe for you to express yourself in front of the class anymore. Because of this, the next time you go into class and your teacher asks you for a raise of hands, you put your hand down, out of fear that expressing your authentic opinion will be punished. Over time, the more and more you are exposed to negative social situations, this strategy of self-suppression generalizes. Instead of being confined to the classroom, you might feel the need to suppress yourself when you are with your friends or with your parents. You withdraw your authentic opinion from them, not because they are dangerous, but because you believe that if you disclose yourself to other people, they aren't going to like you anymore. Over time, this keeps happening until it's automatic, and then it disappears from your awareness entirely, which is exactly when it becomes the most dangerous thing in the condition. Now here's the part that makes self-suppression so difficult to see, and so difficult to treat. Every time the suppression strategy runs, it produces 3 consequences simultaneously, and all 3 of those consequences get attributed to who you are, not to the strategy. The first thing suppression does is it degrades self-concept clarity. When you continuously filter your authentic responses to other people, you naturally lose access to the parts of yourself you want other people to see. Over time, this reshapes the way you perceive yourself in front of other people, and it turns you into someone who is chronically unsure of themselves in social situations. The second thing it does is it limits your exposure to meaningful social experiences and people who care about you. When you suppress your authentic opinion from other people, you aren't fully recognizing that who you are is worthy of acceptance. Because of this, your social experiences with other people are a fraction of what they could be. It also makes the people who you expose yourself to less enthusiastic, positive, and warm. When you chronically suppress yourself from others, you tend to surround yourself with people who do the same as well, leading you to be around other people who withdraw and make you feel insecure. The third thing suppression does is it actively degrades your social performance. When you're convinced that you should be suppressing yourself from other people, your attention splits between what is happening on the inside and what is happening on the outside. Because of this attention split, your social performance degrades in a meaningful way. You are no longer focusing on the person in front of you, their desires, and their intentions. You are focused inward on yourself at the same time, which makes connecting with other people more difficult than it sounds. The reason why I know all of this from the inside is because when I was deepest in social anxiety, I didn't experience it as just hiding parts of myself. I experienced it as though I was the person who hid himself from others. It became part of my identity, and because of it, I just assumed social anxiety was the norm. If you'd like to learn more about how identity shapes your experience with social anxiety, feel free to subscribe to my newsletter. It's the second link in the description. Here's what makes self-suppression even harder to escape. Your desire for connection is still there, underneath all of your anxiety. You still want friends, you still want to connect. That hasn't gone anywhere. But underneath this desire, your entire system is reorganized around a completely different objective. Don't let them see you for how defective you actually are. Limit exposure. Control the presentation. Minimize the risk of full visibility. Inside of you, you have 2 systems running simultaneously and pointing in opposite directions. This makes participating in social situations even more difficult. When you go into social situations, you are simultaneously trying to suppress yourself just enough to avoid rejection, while also trying to seek acceptance and approval from others. This is why exposure alone doesn't break the pattern underneath your anxiety. You can try harder at socializing, attend more events, push through more interactions, force more conversations. But if the suppression strategy is running underneath all of it, the effort is being applied to the output, while the mechanism generating the problem stays active. You're working harder inside of a system that is designed to reconstitute. So this is what's actually happening. Social anxiety doesn't persist because of the anxiety. It persists because of the self-suppression strategy running underneath it, conditioning its costs onto your sense of self, generating its own confirming evidence, and hiding its causal role throughout. That is why nothing you've tried at the level of the thought has helped. You were working on outputs generated by a mechanism you didn't have a name for. Now you have a name for it, but naming it is only the first layer. Because what that suppression strategy does, over time, across enough cycles, is something that goes deeper than anxiety. It rewrites who you believe you are. It doesn't just make you anxious in social situations. At a certain point in its development, it stops being something that happens to you and starts being something you become. That is the next layer of this model. And it's the layer that explains why understanding social anxiety doesn't automatically produce recovery. The identity layer is why intellectual understanding isn't enough. And that's what I'll be covering next.